in law school now. She's married, has two little children, and is just, very successful and all that. And but we taught all the kids about setting boundaries. And every Thursday, I would get Caitlin, and we'd go to the mall and go to the candle store. That was our ritual, and she'd get three little candles, one for her, one for her sister, and one for her mother. That was our shopping for the day, and we'd run up and down the aisles and just play on a, if the weather was bad, particularly, otherwise we'd go to the park. But anyway, we had already made the candle run, and we were on the way to go to the car to pick up her sister from school. We happened to pass, that was not a good thing, but we passed the candle shop again, and Caitlin wanted to go back in there. And I said, now, Caitlin, we've already done that. We've got to go get Natalie. Well, she just threw a fit. She threw her a little fit. And so what I did is I just clapped for her. And I said, you are the best little fit thrower I have ever seen. And she stopped in the middle of it and put her hand on her hip. And she said, Minnie, don't use that therapy stuff on me. So, see, she set a boundary with me. She didn't want to be therapized in the middle of the mall. But anyway, she stopped her fit throwing. But allow children to have their feelings. And I'm sure I've told this story. Have I told the story about the little boy in the park? Millions of times. One of the best boundary stories that I can ever tell is and how to allow children to have their feelings is every day this little boy, or most days, this little boy, his mother would take him to the park, and he was about 4 or 5 years old. One day his dad had a day off from work, and he decided to take him. Now, this is the first time they'd gone to the park, and he got there, and he felt kind of uncomfortable because all these mothers were sitting around, and the little boy ran over to the sandbox to play, and that was his little group of friends that he knew them. And but his dad sat on a bench, and every once in a while he'd look over there at his dad. His dad was his security, and he didn't want his security to leave. But every once in a while, the dad would walk over there and just kind of, say, hey, guys, what are y'all doing? Well, his little boy wanted back over there on that bench. He was embarrassed that the dad was, meddling in his sandbox. And so that in itself was a boundary. And the father honored that. He went back and sat down, and so after a while, the dad got up, walked 20 feet to a water fountain to get a drink of water. And about that time, all this time, the little boy was checking to make sure his dad was still there. That was his security sitting on that bench. So about the time he looked up, his dad wasn't on the bench. And he got scared, and he jumped up and ran around looking for his dad. Well, his dad never took his eyes off the little boy. He knew where the little boy was, and he knew where he was. He's getting a drink of water. But it scared the little boy because his security had left the area. And so the father watched him, and it just took a few minutes, seconds maybe. And all of a sudden, the little boy, he saw his dad, and his first impulse was to get angry. Where were you? Where were you? I was scared. And then all of a sudden that anger, and he was even kind of kicking his dad, on his shins. And the dad got embarrassed, wondering what those mothers were thinking. But anyway, the little boy, the dad got down. Now this is the dad gave his son permission to have feelings. Some fathers would have been embarrassed. They would have said, pull yourself up by your bootstraps. Stop that crying. If you don't stop crying, I'm going to give you something to cry about. If you don't stop, we're going to leave and go home. Just being a bully to his little boy. But what he did, he allowed him to have his feelings. And this just took place in a few minutes. And so the little boy was angry, and then all of a sudden the dad got down on eye level with the little boy. And when he did that, the little boy's anger turned to crying, and because the little boy had been scared, it was a valid feeling. And so the dad put his arms around the little boy, and the little boy hugged him. Oh, and then he realized the other kids was watching, and so he, this just took place in a few seconds. And all of a sudden, he pushed the dad away. He got down, he ran over there in the sandbox and finished playing. Now, that is a healthy lesson on boundary setting, also on allowing our children to have their own feelings. And so when that kid grows up, the dad could have said something like, if you don't stop crying, that famous saying, I'm going to give you something to cry about. Or he might have jerked him up by the hand and even swatted him on the butt. He might have done any number of things because he wanted the kid to be quiet because there was a reflection of him. And those mothers he thought was judging him. But the father was a wise father. And he took time with him and he listened to him and he allowed him to have his feelings, his anger, his pain, and then the joy. They hugged and he went back to the sandbox. That is being able to set healthy boundaries on that father's part, knowing that allowing that child to have his own process. So feelings are our emotions, it's important, that's our reality, and our behavior. Our behavior is what we do or don't do, and that is who we're made up of, all of those things. And so a boundary is, we set healthy boundaries to protect those things. Now, one thing, we can, like I said a while ago, we can just be so good at protecting our own boundaries and be a boundary violator. Be a boundary violator. You know what a boundary violator is? Someone says something to you, and rather than just listen, you reflect back to them. I want to tell you right now how to set boundaries. So there's an external boundary. An external boundary is pretty simple. An external boundary is you pretend that you're inside of a hula hoop, a circle around yourself, and whatever the person inside that hula hoop, you are responsible for them. You are responsible for yourself. You're responsible for who you allow, how close you let them come. You're responsible for who you keep out of that circle. That is your responsibility. Now, that's your external system. Like I said a while ago, if you're familiar with someone and you've got like that unwritten contract, every time you see each other, you're going to hug, that's already set in stone. Other people, maybe you don't hug them. And if they tried to hug you, maybe you could stick out your hand and, shake hands instead, something to break that. But it's that external system is about who you let come close to you. This is what you have to teach children, is who is allowed inside that hula hoop with them. And so that is needs to be your boundary, who you allow, how close you allow people to come to you. Is sometimes it's hard, it may be difficult, but it's pretty simple compared to internal boundaries. An internal boundary is the hardest to set. This is where people hurt your little sensitive feelings. Eleanor Roosevelt, I loved what she said, that no one can hurt our feelings without our permission. It's a two-way deal. Someone can say something, and if we agree with them by allowing it to hurt our sensitive feelings. And that is up to the individual to protect. That internal boundary is the hardest to protect. It's the hardest to teach children. And I will tell you, people are going to break that. because or tried to break that internal boundary, because we're fallible human beings. We say things off at the top of our head sometimes that we really don't mean, or we do mean it, but we wouldn't say it in that tone of voice sometimes. So that internal boundary protects what that internal boundary protects is it protects our thinking, it protects our feelings, and it protects behavior, and it acts like a block or a filter. No one can tell you, don't feel like that. Why are you feeling like that? Well, so that internal boundary, when you are in a relationship with someone that can set their own boundaries, are you hearing me? If you're in a relationship with someone that can set their own boundaries, and you can set your own boundaries, what that creates is a spiritual connection. You're not worried about their boundaries, and they're not worried about you. You can say something, and you don't have to worry about it's going to hurt their feelings. Now, I will tell you, when you're around healthy people, if you say something that really kind of gets them in their heart, they will ask for a clarity about that. Now, help me understand, is this what you mean? So it opens up a whole new conversation when you can set healthy boundaries with each other. I used to be a screamer, and I limited my screaming and my rage to those that I loved the most, my precious children and my husband, but mainly my kids. I was a boundary violator with my voice. And by the grace of God, I don't do that anymore. And Spencer is 23 years old. And when God removed that rage from me, his mother was pregnant with him. So I know my recovery date as far as a rager was 23 years ago. And I no longer rage. Can I get angry? I guess I can. I can get angry sometimes about our country or this or that or something, but I don't rage today. So when you are in a relationship with someone that can set their own boundaries and you can set your boundaries, there is a spiritual connection that is made. It's like God's in the center of that. Shake your head if you know what I mean. You do not have to be on your toes all the time, so afraid of what you're going to say or afraid of the tone of voice, because you're not going to be saying those things, for one thing. And another thing, if you do, they can set a healthy boundary, and it will create an opening where you can talk to each other. All right, let me go over how to set a healthy boundary. There are people who have no boundaries. They're just like, here I am, world, come in and abuse me. They have zero boundaries. And it's hard to be around people like that because they see you as no boundaries. Are you with me? And you are just free gratis here. They have no boundaries, consequently they think you don't. And they get their sensitive feelings hurt if they try to hug you or do something and you set a boundary. It goes to their heart. They feel like they've been put down. Maybe you're just not up for a hug that day, but they'll take it so personal if they don't know how to set healthy boundaries. So, all right, this next person is, maybe there's something up here. Maybe they have been hurt in the past. Maybe they have a childhood of abuse, and they learned early on that they were not going to be hurt again, and they built walls. Have you ever lived around anyone that had walls? And I mean, my husband, he's been gone about 12 years now. He had been hurt bad as a child, and he had walls. And through Al-Anon, I learned that those walls had nothing to do with me. It had everything to do with his childhood. The only way that he knew to deal with conflict was he would get silent and put that wall up. If you've ever been around someone that deals with conflict with silence, that's abusive. It is a form of abuse because it creates no opening for a resolution when they put that wall up and they get silent. And my husband, that's what he would do. He would get silent. He'd get mad at me about something. One time, not that I was counting, but one time he went 30 days without speaking to me. That was a big hurt. Another time, 18 days. He could ignore people like they had never been ignored, like they'd never existed, until he got into recovery and until my family and I did a little intervention on him and sent his little skinny ass to the Meadows for treatment. And guess what? He learned about boundaries out there, and he realized what he was doing with his silence. He wouldn't listen or couldn't hear from me and the kids. He'd do it with the kids too, but I was his prime target to get silent with, and that's very abusive. So you build a wall, you get silent, and you let people out, but guess what? And you keep them out, but you keep any of the good stuff from coming in also. All right, so this next one is damaged boundaries, where you have had some form of childhood abuse. Your boundaries have been violated in childhood, and so those boundaries are called damaged boundaries, where you can set a boundary with maybe someone you feel very safe with, but if you're around somebody you might not know or that you might not feel safe with, boy, that wall will come up. And so it's kind of one extreme or the other when you have damaged boundaries. And it's hard to have a relationship with a person with damaged boundaries that doesn't recognize that they have damaged boundaries. Because we're going to all say things that maybe, one of the things that I'm guilty of is being flippant. I'll just say things kind of off the cuff, y'all know what I mean? And it can sound funny at the time, but 9 times out of 10, I mean it. That I can say, and then if they catch on that I mean it, I think I'll say things like, "Good night, can't you take a joke?" And so that is a boundary violation, and it's not being honest about my feelings. I get flippant. Do y'all know what I'm talking about? Something will happen and just off the cuff, I'll say something, and if the person really gets that I'm serious, then I'll come back and say, "Good night, I was just joking," so I put it back on them. And that's not healthy, but at least I know that I do it. I don't do it as much as I used to. Thank you very much. So, healthy boundaries. How do you set healthy boundaries? Healthy boundaries, when you have an intact boundary, and how we get an intact boundary is there's some people, you get to know who you need to set limits with. You know what I mean? You don't go to the grocery store and let everybody there just come up and hug you, nor do you go into the grocery store hugging everybody. You don't let people get too close to you. I don't like for people to get right up close to me unless we have that negotiated ahead of time. I'm sure that has a lot to do with being a survivor, but anyway, I can set pretty good boundaries. And so when you can set healthy boundaries, what that does, it lets people know how close they can get to you, but also you take responsible for your own boundaries and you quit being a boundary violator. You can just set your boundaries all you want to and then violate other people's boundaries. Do you know what I mean by that? Being a boundary violator? how you're a boundary violator. One thing is over talking, over hugging, over being in their physical space, minding their business and not minding your own business. Getting over there inside of their hula hoop. That's how you break boundaries. And if you're in a relationship with someone that does that, what happens? You will either teach them how to set a boundary by coming over here and standing tall and firm about boundary setting, or you will leave that relationship. So, tips for setting boundaries. When we need to set a boundary with someone, do it real clearly. Verbalize it without anger and in as few words as possible. There are women, and when I was at the Serenity House, we treated mostly men, but we'd get women in sometimes, and we'd get some women in there. And the men would just swarm to them. And they wouldn't even look good. They wouldn't even be good lookers, but the men would just swarm to them. And then we'd get some women in there that, looked fairly nice once they got detoxed and cleaned up and all. And the men would leave them alone. Guess what? Those women knew how to set healthy boundaries. They would just not let those men come that close to them. So you have to teach people how to treat you. We've taught them one way, and now if you have not been able to set boundaries, you're going to have to teach them another way. And I will tell you, people won't like it. When you start setting boundaries, they usually don't like it. So we cannot simultaneously set a boundary and take care of another person's feelings. When you're in a relationship or a friendship or something and someone gets their feelings hurt, if you're setting a healthy boundary, you cannot take care of their feelings. It's not your job to. You can sit with them, you can observe, you can ask, is there anything I can do for you? Or you can just sit and listen, or you can remove yourself, if you don't want to sit and listen to him. But it's not your business to take care of another person and another person's feelings. It's not your job. And so another thing is, when you first start setting boundaries, you're going to have can have a lot of shame about it. And when we set boundaries, that fear can come up and do it anyway. And the fear is that people will leave you. Guess what? When you start setting real healthy boundaries, people might leave you, particularly those that you have taken complete care of. When I got back from treatment, yes, I had been in Al-Anon for years. We don't talk about boundaries in Al-Anon. I didn't learn them in Al-Anon. Maybe y'all do in your Al-Anon groups. But, in the 80s, no one was talking about boundaries, really. But when I got back home from treatment, some of my relationships were the most enmeshed relationships. And when I started pulling back and setting some healthy boundaries, you might lose some friends. I did. Some because I was an overdoer. I overcared. I took care of people and too much. So when you start setting the boundary, be prepared. Not everyone will like it. So when you are around someone, they might get angry, they might rage, they may complain, they may whine. When people go home from shades, I have had them call back or write back, or the family will even call, particularly if the family hadn't come to family week. They'll say things like, well, she's just not the same person since she's come out there. Yeah, that's right. We hope that they're not doing the same things because they learn boundaries here. And so uh, I know when I finally started setting a boundary with my parents, and my parents were very, very, very ill. One time my dad called me, and he was a violent man, violent. So set a boundary if this scares you. I mean, he didn't kill her, but anyway, he called me. My mother was a prescription drug addict and alcoholic, and yeah, I took care of her, and he did not know what to do with her after I left home. But anyway, he called me periodically, I mean a lot, but he called me this one day, and he said, if you don't come out here right now and take care of the old lady, I've got a gun to her head, and I'm going to blow her head off. I said, Dad, I guess you will have to do that because I'm not coming out there. I'm not coming out there. That was their sickness together. I did not hear from either one of them for 6 months. Now, I knew if he had killed her, the sheriff's department would have come in, the caretaker would be there, he would find them, and then I would have been notified. 6 months I didn't hear from either one of them. So be prepared when you set boundaries, they're going to get mad at you. I mean, I love that 6 months because they wouldn't bother me. So to come out and referee, that's what they want me to do. All right, so when you start setting boundaries, you'll be tested. They won't take it the first time. They'll just think, oh, well, you've been, they'll eye roll, oh, here she goes. She's been reading another book or something, and this too shall pass. That's what people will think. Another thing is be prepared to follow through with the boundaries and have some consistency, because if you don't have some consistency, they're not going to pay any attention to you. They're not going to believe you. And remember that no is a complete sentence. Karen Lee, my daughter and I, my 3 daughters and I are writing a book together. And we were talking the other day that when she was about 10 years of age, I went into my bathroom one morning and there was no's all over my bathroom, big bathroom mirror. And she'd cut them out. She'd worked on that project for a long time. She'd cut them out of magazines, newspapers, N-O, 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 all over that mirror. And I knew immediately who it was. I called her in there and said, Karen, tell me about this. And she said, well, Mother, you never say no to anyone. Out of the mouths of babes. And because I was afraid if I set a boundary to that PTO, they wouldn't even call PTA, PTO, or to those being a room mother, or to 4-H, or whatever I was into, if I said no, they wouldn't like me. So I said yes to everything. And I learned later that they picked on people like me. They would go toward people that wouldn't say no, and they just loaded us down because we took it. So anyway, when you start setting boundaries, be prepared to be consistent with them because they won't believe you and they will try to break through that boundary. Some people are happy to respect the boundaries, and others will get angry, and particularly when we stop caretaking them. There's been times if there's been really, really some bad stuff at home, maybe rage with, I'm talking about having a client, or maybe there's physical violence or some form of, some really violence that they're going back into. One of the things that we have encouraged, and particularly if they're young people, we have encouraged them maybe to put a time limit on setting a boundary, like divorce your parents for 6 months, divorce your parents for 3 months, give yourself some time, or if it's not parents, someone else, whoever you're having conflict with, give yourself some time. If you're just learning how to set boundaries. and don't get around the hard people first. Practice setting those boundaries and then go back around, because they're not gonna believe you. You know, when you've been saying yes to them all of these years, and now all of a sudden you're going to choose no instead of yes, they're not going to believe you. And they'll do everything to break that boundary. They'll, you can almost see them, they'll come up and ask you to do something, and you'll say, no, I can't do that. And you don't say, no, I'm sorry, I'm so sorry, I can't do that. I'm so sorry, I'll do it. No, you don't do that. You say, no, I can't do that. Then they'll go back and regroup and come back around and try to get you to do it in another way. They'll do everything to break that boundary. When you first start setting boundaries, they will not believe you. And then what this does, it frees you up. It frees you up to when your no's will be no. No, I can't do that today. But when you say yes, you're all in. You're all in. Yes, I can do that. And no strings attached. You won't come back later and say, well, you made me do that. I had to do that, and you'd get mad at me. You know, your yes will be more powerful. Yes, I can do that. I want to do that. And they'll be all in. But when you're saying no, and you give in to that no, they got you. They got you. So, and another thing, I can sit here and teach you about boundaries, but you're going to start setting boundaries when you're ready. When you get sick and tired of being sick and tired and doing everything for everyone else, Miss Codependent or Mr. Codependent, when you get tired of doing that, you're going to start setting boundaries, and not a minute sooner. And not a minute sooner. And the fact is, you might like it. You might like being a severe codependent. Who knows? Who are we to take that away from you if you like all that caretaking? Because we do the caretaking when you can't say no and set healthy boundaries. We say yes with an expectation. Oh, this time they're going to really love me. This time they're going to do something for me. If I say yes to them, they're going to do something for me tomorrow. You set yourself up, and they're not going to do it, most of the time, unless you ask. But then if you need something done and you're in a relationship with someone and you ask them to do something for you and all you hear is no from them, you might want to check out that relationship. If you're saying all the yeses and you're hearing all the no's, there's something uneven about that relationship. Okay, a support system is helpful. It is helpful to go to a 12-step meeting. CODA, and we've got a CODA meeting that has started out at Shades on Sundays at 3 o'clock. CODA is a different type of meeting. They're strict with the guidelines. And if you can't adhere to those guidelines, don't go to CODA, because they're going to teach you how to set boundaries, how to stay within the guidelines of running a CODA meeting. I mean, first one I ever went to was up at Nashville. I went with a friend of mine, and CODA was just starting. And I'd been in 12-step programs for years. And here they were. I mean, they were like Nazis with those rules. But they have to be in CODA, because most people who show up in CODA meetings know zero about boundary setting. They overtalk. They take over meetings. Another thing that I was in OA, and before I went to treatment, I quit going to OA meetings. And so they closed and locked the door in August. I went to treatment in September. And why they closed is because we quit going by the traditions in the meetings. we would go in there and walked in one time, and there was a man in there with a baritone, one of those big old bass horns, and he wanted to serenade us. And guess what? We were all so codependent, we couldn't say no, and he took up the whole meeting playing that, serenading us with that horn. You can't do that in meetings. You've got to adhere to the principles of the meetings. And when people go to CODA, they go because they don't know how to set boundaries. They go because they can't follow rules, and they get into CODA. And if there's not strong leadership, you'll lose that CODA meeting. So I'm hoping that CODA will go here. It's been really hard at Abilene, Texas to get CODA started and for it to continue, because there's a lot of times you're going to get people that are boundary violators. And when you get people that are boundary violators, unless the leaders are really strong and they have a voice, they'll let them ramrod the meeting. So we have a meeting, and I don't know how I brought all this up, but we have a meeting. A new meeting started in CODA. I think they've met maybe 2 or 3 weeks. It's on Zoom, but it's also live. And guess what? I'm going to be there. I'm going to go Sunday afternoon at 2:30. I need a good CODA meeting. I'm going to go to that meeting, and because I want to go and get something. And how I get something is I sit and I listen. And if I have something to share when it comes my turn, I will. And I learned that from all of y'all in 12-step programs. I learned that in meetings. I'll tell you what, you do not go to an AA meeting and do some of the things that people do in CODA meetings where they talk out of turn. You don't do that, do you, Jeff? I mean, you know, there's order.
Oh,
there is order. And that's what we need in 12-step meetings, is to teach each other how to set healthy boundaries, because most of us have come out of unhealthy homes that we were never taught. If you want to learn how to really set healthy boundaries, go to a healthy, open AA meeting. They're going to teach you. You won't talk till you're called on. When you've talked too much, they'll ask you to stop. And you can tell in AA meetings, if it's a large meeting, and particularly if they've got talkers, they'll pull out that timer and they'll give you 3 minutes. And when that timer goes off, it'll go ding, ding, ding. You sit out. They will not let you utter another word. That's discipline. You get to be disciplined with yourself. So, and they're teaching you how to set healthy boundaries. All right, I don't know how to go off on all that. All right, the support system will help, like CODA meetings, setting clear boundaries, orders, and emotional reward. Set a clear boundary. And, you know, this come close, and I have been guilty of that in the past, I can engage people. I'm an engager. I can engage people and get them to come close. That after I get them to come close, it's like, oh, well, this isn't too good of a fit. And so I will put up that wall to keep them out. So be honest about your boundaries. If you want to be around someone, be around them, set a healthy boundary. And if you don't engage with them. You know, I don't know if you've got anything out of that, but I do want to tell you 1 minute about confrontations. And this is very, all of y'all know how to set confrontations. All of you have been in our workshop with confrontations, haven't you? Now, if you're not using this model, you're missing out, particularly if you have a family. But you have to teach. You can use it in a business or in a family, but you have to teach everyone the model. Kids love this model. I'm going to go speak in July to an international wrestling event, and there'll be people there from participants from 12 to 25, and then coaches, and then parents. And I'm going to teach them how to set confrontations. And wouldn't that be interesting if those wrestlers, those athletes start confronting those coaches? But this is a healthy tool. And the tool is is when you want to confront someone, you ask for their time, you ask for time, and then, where there's not a lot of interruptions going on, and then this is what you say, and you say and you state the behavior, the exact behavior. You don't get vague and you don't put 5 or 6 things in there. Let's just say this: when you were late for dinner last night, and you didn't call and tell me you were going to be late. What I make up or think about that, what I think is what we make up. That's the biggest part of this confrontation tool, is what I think, because we make up stuff in our heads that is absolutely unbelievable. But when you can get it out and tell it to that other person will think, wow, I didn't know that. So what I make up or think is that you don't respect me enough to call me. And I allow myself to feel some pain and anger. And I need a request. This is behavior change request. What I request is that call me if you are going to be late coming home. And if you continue in your behavior, what do you intend to do? You're going to have to take some action. If they continue not calling you, what do you intend to do? And don't intend to say you're going to do it if you're not. One thing, I broke my husband from that habit because what I said, I used this specifically. We had a house full of kids, and not at that time, we didn't. No, this was after. But I used this with him, and I said, if the next time that if you continue not letting me know when you're going to be home, I'm not going to cook dinner. You just plan to bring it home with you. You just pick up dinner somewhere else. I'm not going to cook. And I kept my word to him. And that broke him from the habit. He did start calling me. It's just common courtesy. A lot of this. So this tool, if you don't have a copy of it, we will send you a copy of it. You've all been taught this if you've done any work at Shades, because this is one of the best ways to do a confrontation, but teach it to all the family members. And when you do that, your kids will use it. It gives them a place to have a voice. It is not resolution. It is being able to speak how you feel about something without hollering and screaming and it being, a knockdown, drag out battle. It's when you state the behavior. When you slam that door every time you go out, what I think or make up is that you're angry. And what I request is that you don't slam the door when you go outside. And what I intend to do, if you continue to slam the door, is confront you every time that you do. So I made that, and my daughter said, thank you. I made that confrontation to Kim back 2-3 years ago. Guess what? That screen door that I was complaining to her about slamming, it had, the way it was built, it had a catch that when you open that and you close it, it gets away from you like that, and it's going to snap back, and it sounds like someone has slammed it shut. What I gained by doing this confrontation, I learned about that door, that she wasn't slamming it. I didn't have to get angry at her. It was the way the door is built, it just snaps shut. So there's a lot of benefit from these tools that we give you, and that one of the things is confrontation will open up an avenue for some communication. When you do a confrontation, you just say thank you for sharing. But you don't get into a lot of excuses and all of that. You wait, come back maybe 24 hours the next day, and then discuss it. Otherwise, it's pretty clean cut. They have a behavior request. You either do it or you're not going to do it. And so, anyway, if you want a copy of this, we'll send to you. I think I have gone completely over time. They wanted me to do something, and I've completely forgot it, haven't I? Have I?
You're just closing off on Facebook.
I'm closing.
On Facebook, if you're done before
Okay.
Back.
So to all of my Facebook, I'm not very good at following directions, but I'm trying my best this morning. They want me to talk to Facebook, so I'm not going to be looking at you. I'm going to talk over here at Facebook. All right,
Just for a second.
For a second. All right. All right. To all my Facebook folks, before I begin the feedback, which I've already run out of time, so why don't you come over here and do this? It's hard. It's hard. I'm going to get Misty to do this for me.
Okay.
All right? Take that toothpick out of your mouth. She's going to do it for me.
Okay, we have to close out on Facebook for the feedback portion of Zoom, and if you want to in the future be with us during feedback, you can always zoom in. The info's in the post. But we would like, if you want updates on the new exciting things happening at Shades, the meetings coming up, intensives, workshops, Tennie's travels and speaking engagements, just you can message Tennie on Facebook, or you can text Cam at 325-668-9143 with your email, and we will add you to our newsletter with all the updates. So until next week, we'll see you then. You can tell them bye.
Okay, one of the things that we want to really emphasize is, we used to have alumni meetings, and it got difficult to get leaders, and somehow